Hi, Mr. Frank, can you hear us?
Mr. Allgood.
Test.
I know. We were talking about it the other day. She's like, third, fourth.
Mr. Frank, is your audio working pretty good?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'm being told to start. What time is it? All right, we'll call to order the first committee meeting of tonight, January the 6th, Public Safety. It is 6:01 and present are myself, Mr. Kraling, and we have Mr. Allgood joining us via Zoom. Agenda, I'm kind of off. Okay. So this brings us to our first public comment. If anyone has public comment, please step forward. Seeing none, none online. We'll move to the reading and approval of minutes from November the 4th.
Make a motion to approve as submitted.
Have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second for Mr. Allgood. Any corrections or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the minutes from November the 4th, say aye.
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 None opposed, motion carries. Reports from our chiefs. Chief McCollum's up. I'll change the order on me, so I never know what to expect sometimes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I'm gonna keep it sort of short and sweet tonight. Only updates is just like our budget. We're at 48%. We're out of where we need to be for the year. And we will be doing I guess, a year-end review of all the calls of the data and stuff that we've got. Y'all be seeing that in the future. And as of end of last year, we run 5,547 calls. Last year, I think it was 4,900 something. So we've increased a good little bit.
Do you think a lot of that's due to just the growth of the city?
Yes, ma'am. Most of it, like I said, 68 to 69% is medical. So we'll give you more detailed out in the future.
Are there any questions for Chief McCollum? All right, seeing none. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Mr. Rado. Oh, there she is. You're hiding from me behind the podium. Happy New Year.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I'll also be real quick tonight. Just usual budget stuff. We are under budget on all our line items and we're just keeping an eye on that. I am waiting for also some numbers from the county in order to give you some of the statistics for the end of year 2024. And the only other quick update is I did some analyzing for our weekend and holiday bonding acceptance hours from bondsmen and also people who want to post cash bonds. We were working from 9 a.m. to 12 noon. I've just taken that down from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m., which is still well within court administration. And I think it just makes the most sense for efficiencies for both the bondsmen and the judges. Other than that, all same.
Great, perfect. Any questions, comments? I will share with committee. I had a tour of it was not really renovated, just with the new furniture and some of the lightened up space of downstairs. So if y'all have the opportunity when you're in City Hall to stop by, I'm sure Mr. Rado would give y'all a tour as well. It looks super nice. Yeah. All right. Thank you. Chief Miller.
Ms. King, Mr. Curley, Mr. Allgood. We're doing good on the budget as well. Two things I was going to bring up is our community team. They're going to be working with Special Olympics pretty soon doing the polar plunge. I'll get the dates on that for you as soon as I get those. And also Corporal Sefcek's been working on a car show that we'll be having, I think is in March. And I'll get you the exact.
Sounds right.
But that's about all we got going on right now.
All right.
I'll go stay up here.
All right. If there's no questions for Chief, then we'll move on to the unfinished business part of the agenda. Can you scroll? Thank you. I didn't have that page. There's no unfinished business, so the new business will only have one item on the agenda tonight, which is the Malden Police Department state appropriations to the budget. Chief, you want to give us
Straight off of here so we don't miss anything.
Okay.
City Council is being asked to consider approving an expenditure plan for the Malden Police Department to be funded by appropriations from fiscal year 2024, 2025 South Carolina state budget. As part of the South Carolina 2024-2025 fiscal year budget, appropriations were made to the City of Malden's Police Department for the purchase of a mobile command post vehicle and to replace outdated special response team equipment. Funding is being provided by the Department of Public Safety and totals $500,000. Staff's initial budget allocation to DPS forecasted the mobile command vehicle to approximately $400,000, and the remaining $100,000 will be used for SRT equipment. Prior to purchasing SRT equipment, MPD staff took time to evaluate the potential specifications and cost of a mobile command post vehicle between July 20 of 24 and December 20 of 24. MPD worked with more than 7 vendors, numerous law enforcement agencies, and toured similarly designed vehicles to better understand the design, production, and functionality of a CPV, or a command post vehicle. In early December, MPD released a request for proposal with the minimum and preferred specifications for a CPV. Responses were due January 3rd, 2025, and were evaluated by staff. Additionally, MPD has identified equipment to be replaced for the SRT to enhance the team's capabilities and increase officer and public safety. Equipment to be replaced will include SRT personal protective gear, less than lethal equipment, and operational equipment that will enhance the team's ability to respond to current and emerging departmental needs. The analysis or staff findings: the mobile command vehicle, the City of Malden held a bid opening at 10 a.m. on Friday, January 3rd, and received 11. The bid opening at 10 a.m. Closing, correct? Close, okay. At 10 a.m. on Friday, January 3rd, and received 11 bids from qualifying firms. Given the nature of this procurement, staff evaluated each quote bid received and compared all aspects of the vehicle: installed components, delivery time, warranty, price, and more. Attached is a chart that highlights the primary differences between each vendor, with a green highlight indicating either an advantage or preferred specification feature. Based upon information received, staff recommends council select mobile specialty vehicles as the lowest response. Staff recommends council select mobile specialty vehicles as the lowest responsive bidder that reflects the greatest value to the city. Staff also requests council allocate $375,000 of the $500,000 grant towards the purchase, equipping, and delivery of the CPV from MSV, and for any unforeseen contingencies. The SRT equipment, MPD seeks to utilize remaining funds, $125,000, for the purchase of various SRT equipment. The equipment MPD intends to purchase falls within the following categories in budget: personal protective gear, protective equipment, $53,000, less than lethal equipment, $15,000, and operational equipment, $57,000, which totals $125,000. So with that and the cost of the mobile command vehicle, it comes up to $500,000. And
Madam Chair, I did have a typo on the first page. So the 375, 125 breakdown is the correct breakdown.
Yes, okay, perfect.
before I turn it over to Tiny over here, I'd like to say that Captain Hodrea spent many, many hours and lots of time on the phone doing research and everything for this, so he did a fantastic job. So I'll call him up here, let him go through the rest of it with you.
And I'll add, for committee's sake, I spoke with Mr. Duncan earlier this afternoon, and he also shared that a lot of work had gone into this. So thank you so much for all that you have done, Captain. And in looking at the chart, I know we got it kind of late. Do you have it, Mr. Allgood? The updated information? Okay. There's nothing really that concerning to me. I just wanted to add that. I appreciate y'all looking at what is the best value for Malden and what works best for the police department, even though it may not be the lowest cost, it's what makes most sense. So if there's anything else you want to add for committee, or if you want to just have committee ask you questions, however you want to handle it's fine with me.
Madam Chair and members of the committee, if I could, I guess just a little quick run through
Sure.
the chart and how we got here. Excuse me for my cough. I've been battling something this the weekend. as far as what we can put on paper, just to show, the differences in the vendors, this is part of it. And also on the bottom and the back page are what we put in the RFP, excuse me, regarding the requirements. We came to the decision of the requirements. It wasn't a one-man show, and I appreciate Chief's words and Mr. Duncan's words as well, but it wasn't my decision alone on how to set this vehicle up. We took members of the department from investigations, patrol, dispatchers, IT, and we went and toured Greenville County's big bus that they have, and they each had a say in how this vehicle should be set up for and the purpose for this vehicle. So that kind of led to our specifications for this vehicle, which led to the list and the RFP, and this is what we came up with. The big thing to note is that MSV, while there are some vendors that are a little bit lower in price, the quality and the quality of the vehicle compared to the lower priced, and to the fact that they've successfully satisfied all our requirements, as apparent on this page, speaks volumes to them. The big thing with them as well was the delivery dates. Ram being when I talked to them last, they have one ready to go on the lot, ready to build right now if we wanted to take it. A lot of these other vendors, especially, and we've seen this with our patrol vehicles, Ford it takes a minute to get some vehicles. The backlog of ordering trucks and getting them, you're adding anywhere between 4 to 6 to 8 months additional on top of the regular time frame it takes to build the vehicle. So we weren't only looking for a vehicle that we can get in a quick amount of time, but we didn't want to wait 2 years to get it either. As you can see, if there's any questions about what's on the list and what are some of the items, several months, I learned about a lot of different things and build features of vehicles and IT equipment and wiring and everything from fuel tanks to roof ladders. And I believe that MSV is going to be the one to provide what the city needs, and a good amount of time at a great value for the city.
And they're located in Indiana, is that correct?
I'm not going to Wakarusa, Indiana. Yes, ma'am.
So once it's built out, if council approves the recommendation, will you and other members of staff go to see the vehicle prior to it being, kind of like we did with those nice fire trucks?
Yes, ma'am. Almost every vendor on the list offers some sort of come to our facility and see the tour. Some don't, but most of them do. They do.
Okay, and y'all plan to do that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, awesome. Questions?
So this is the vehicle itself. What is it? Is it a Ram?
So it's a Ram 5500 chassis cab, and it has a 22 1/4 shell on the back of it. So when I say I went to school on specialty vehicles for the last few months, there's all kinds of ways to build these things. Some of these vendors on here that it really isn't reflected in the paperwork. Some of them still use off-the-shelf U-Haul trucks with rivets on the side, and now they insulate them and they do all that. But anybody that knows, if you put a hole in a piece of metal and you rivet it down the road, a few years down, it could be a place where a leak could happen or a corrosion or whatnot. They do not use that. They build more of a clamshell fiberglass type shell. They're one of 2 other vendors that do this. Better weatherproofing, long line of many years of experience building these types of vehicles. But
It's with the Cummins?
it is not. We opted for the V8, the gas. The only diesel options on here were from the manufacturers from International. Our opinion on the diesel were more power, more torque, but for a vehicle that probably isn't going to get that many miles a year, it's not good for diesel to sit. We intend to use it. We have multiple uses for it, but it's not going to be a patrol car that gets driven 200 miles a day. If it were, then maybe a diesel would be better, but for our purposes, and maintenance, I think the gas is a better option for us.
The only thing you may want to check on, excuse me, Stellantis is just about to drop their prices 35. Want to
Yeah.
ask the supplier that there's been a big drop. Are we going to get something back for it?
I'll surely ask, and I
Ask, right?
can't hurt to ask, no.
And on this, so the budgeting, this was in our budget. I remember how I read this. It was in our budget, 375.
Yes, sir. We,
Appropriation.
yes, sir. Out of the state appropriations of $500,000, we had kind of earmarked, initially we thought it was gonna be 400, 100, but in looking at the pricing, that's where we were able to bring that down to 375 and 125 for the SRT equipment. And so this 352, 353 is below what we were estimating for it and gives us enough room that if there's an add-on later that we are excited about, or if we need to take 2 trips up to the factory, one to go do pre-inspection and another to do anything else, it gives us that money. Plus, if we want to, instead of driving it all the way home, if we wanted to roll back it or something like that.
If we were to make a motion on this, would we be asking for the 500 or not to exceed 500? Or would we be asking to add to the budget? I was a little
No, it's
confused
the
on that.
state.
Yep. So the authorization actually would be for the approving the capital expenditure plan funded by the state appropriations and select MSV as the lowest responsive bid for the acquisition of the vehicle. But I believe Mr. Frank had a question too before.
Oh,
Mr. Allgood?
thank you. My question was, as you pointed out, if this was a normal patrol car, we're talking about 200 miles a day. What do you think is going to be the expected lifespan of this vehicle?
That's a good question. Most of these vehicles, I'd be lying to give you a good date on it. Looking at surrounding agencies and the agencies that I've talked to within the state, Greenville County's gotten about, they got theirs new in 2009 or 10. So they're on year 14 right now. I talked to several other agencies in the state, and they're all within either newish, the first 5 years, or they're at the end of the lifespan, about 15 to 20 years.
Thank you. That's all I.
Mr. Allgood, I think we would have a decade plus on this vehicle.
Yeah.
And I'll also add, with the Ram being on site, so you're expecting the build out, if it's approved, to be within like a less than 12 months, right?
Yes, yes. So with this company, last we talked, if we were to take that Ram that's on site, it was looking at 4 to 6 month delivery time.
Perfect. 4 to 6 month build out, Mr. Allgood.
Thank you very much. That's all I've got.
All right, what's committee's pleasure?
We can make a motion to, forward to full council recommendation to authorize capital expenditure funded via the state appropriations and select MSV. What's the bidder in the acquisition of the mobile command post vehicle?
All right, have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Mr. Allgood. Any further questions, concerns? Hearing none. All those in favor of forwarding to full council for approval, the approval for the bid with MSV via the state appropriations, $500,000 total appropriation, say aye. Aye. None opposed. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you all for your hard work on that, and Captain for coming in and giving us the short version of what all y'all been going through, I'm sure, for many, many weeks. So that's exciting. All right. Next round of public comment. Seeing, hearing none. Committee concerns. Seeing, hearing none. What do I have on adjournment?
So moved.
Have a motion.
Second.
Second, Mr. Allgood. All those in favor of adjournment, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We adjourned at 6:20. And you can ignore me now.
Calling EPD to order, 6:21 PM on January 6th. Everybody's here. First public comment period. What do I hear on reading and approval of minutes?
So moved.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Is there discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Minutes are approved as presented. Reports, communications from city officers.
Thank you, sir. Just a few updates for everyone. So first, some new commercial construction projects are set to begin in the city of Malden. New commercial projects permitted in December included Lightbridge Academy, a child daycare at Millport, Palmer Dentistry over on East Butler in the Brookfield Office Park, and Malden Urgent Care, which is going in the place of the old Salvation Army store on South Main. And to everyone's delight, demo has begun for the new Taco Bell site. And I was thrilled to see that on my way home on Friday. So that's great to see. The Tanner Plan Development, which is over at Tanner and Verdon, has actually beginning. They're moving dirt now. This project will include 365 apartment units, 90 townhome units, 6 carriage home units, and 13 ground floor workplaces / commercial units. So that's going to be an exciting development unfolding over there. And then Bridgeway Markets has taken over management and operation of the markets at Bridgeway Station. One other note on City Center, development continues on the townhomes. We just got off a call this morning with the railroad about the railroad crossing. The signalization should be occurring hopefully next week or so over at Murray. So if you drive through that area now, you see the base plates of where the new crossing arms and signals are going to be, and then the little gray tower, silver tower, for all their controls. That same stuff, those same elements will be installed at Jenkins and Murray, and that should be coming in the next few weeks. However, they are going to be mobilizing to the site next week, no later than next week, and are wanting to decommission the crossing at Alexander Street, even though the Jenkins Street crossing is not yet operational. And so we're going to be working with them with a detour plan. It was more cost appropriate to go ahead and have, while their crews were in town, do that work and complete that work that they needed to do while we're awaiting the last utility relocation of a telecom provider in order to make way for the final approach ramps installed there at the new track plates that were installed. We're hoping that the time period between the closing at Alexander Street and the opening of Jenkins will be short-lived, but we do plan and we'll be putting out a notification plan for that closure here in the next few days as we get that plan. So we were expecting to have Jenkins open before closing Alexander Street, but due to some technical delays, that's just not the case. But hopefully the detour will only be in place for a few weeks.
Thank you, Mr. Duncan. Any questions, comments for Seth? All right, then we'll move on to unfinished business. There is none, so we move on to new business. Let's talk amphitheater.
Yes, sir. So tonight we have our wonderful special projects manager, Gina McAtee, who's going to kind of walk us through this discussion. But as we all know that during the hurricane, the stage cover at the amphitheater was destroyed, and we've been working behind the scenes to kind of figure out what's the best path forward. We've identified some funding. We've identified potential replacement options, and are wanting to release an RFP tomorrow. And just wanted to get some committee feedback before we do, just to make sure we're on the right path and our RFP is in the right direction on that. And so with that, I'll ask Ms. Gina to come up to the podium, and she'll kind of walk us through what we're looking at.
Good evening. Good evening, Chair and members of the committee. So through information and research, we recommend moving toward a steel structure. A steel cover will give us more capabilities and the proper load-bearing capacity to support stage rigging, sound for sound and lights, and it'll have better long-term durability. With the previous cover being wood, it did not allow for any installation of sound or lights. Having that capacity will not only enhance the quality of concerts and events, but it will allow the city to book larger bands who may have certain lighting requirements. In addition, upon inspection of the fallen wood structure that we had, staff found that it had been rotting in some places. A steel structure is more resistant to environmental factors and will have that long-term durability. The funding of a steel structure does have a higher upfront cost. We estimate it costing around $400,000 to complete, or in the process of seeking funding support, including 2 grants that are coming before you tonight. $77,000 from PARD, And then we have 100,000 from the city's accommodations tax fund. We'll be seeking additional sources of funding as well through various local grants, including the county accommodations tax fund. And then we're also looking at potentially seeking a 10-year naming rights sponsor. We're asking the committee for approval or any feedback on staff's desire to move forward with the steel structure. Once the direction of material for use is confirmed, we'll post an RFP this week. Our goal is to be back in front of you in February with the results of the RFP and a full funding plan.
Any questions for Gina? Mr. Kraling?
Receive insurance.
So we didn't carry the old cover on insurance because of it was a donated material and donated cost. And so it wasn't, so there were no insurance proceeds to be gained from that.
Have we had bands in the past require this and we weren't able to get them?
We have had bands in the past require certain lighting like spotlights and movers that are hung up overhead. We were able to negotiate them to get them here, but that's not to say that every artist would agree to that.
Yeah, last fiscal year, we actually had an appropriation in the budget for some rigging and some lighting out there at the amphitheater, but we were unable to do it because that's when we found that the structure wasn't really made to bear a significant amount of weight. So we had to put that on hold and actually move those funds into the facility, and then we upgraded the lights and some of the sound system in there. And so what we're looking for tonight is just any other feedback or comments from the committee before we put out this RFP. Just that way we're all, we kind of hear any other ideas or concerns or thoughts before we put that out there and get all that squared away and bring it back to you.
Good, Mr.
No, I mean, I think we have an opportunity to do it in a way that sets us up for success going forward. So I think that I like the idea of thinking about what puts us in a good position. So I appreciate that kind of forward thinking as opposed to just trying to get by.
Mr. Kraling, anything else before we? Yeah, Mr. Duncan, for the exact reasons you talked about, looking at the rigging last year and realizing that the stage cover was not meant for that weight and us having to reallocate that money to go inside. I mean, it made an improvement inside the auditorium, but it showed where we had a deficiency there with the stage. I don't think that we can go with another wooden stage cover and expect any different results. So I think that the pleasure of the committee, if I'm reading the room correctly, is that we put out the RFP for the steel or the metal stage cover.
Sounds good, sir.
Okay. And that's not going to require a vote because you were just looking for guidance.
Yep. Just looking for, yep.
So with that being said, let's talk PARD grant.
All right, sir. So tonight we have before us an opportunity to accept the PARD grant. Again, this all kind of ties into one another. As part of what we're trying to do with the stage cover project is find different sources to fund what ultimately could be about a $400,000 cost. We had PARD funds sitting for our use of $77,738.28. We did run this through GLGTC, who gave us their blessing, and it went to the state, and state has now authorized us to use the PARD allocation for this particular project. And so what we're asking for the committee tonight is acceptance of that PARD grant in the amount of $77,738.28 in order to put that towards the new structure for the amphitheater.
Where's the 19.5 local match coming from?
So we have a couple different sources. We have our local not C funds, excuse me, our local ATAX that we'll be talking about next, which is we put in a $100,000 grant to the state ATAX funds that the city controls. And so part of that match comes from that money there. Plus any other local sources that we're able to leverage as well, whether we get private donations, funding from the county ATAX program. So we can stack all of those on top of each other towards our match.
Any questions for Mr. Duncan on this? Can we get a motion to go ahead and accept the PARD grant in the amount of $77,738.22 with the matching local match of $19,434.57? We have a motion
Second.
and a second. Is there discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it, and that goes to full council with a recommendation for approval. Let's keep on boogieing.
Okay. David, are you tackling this? Go for it. Okay.
Gang's all here. Let's make it happen, Captain.
All right, thank you, committee, Mr. Chairman. So next, we're going to talk about the accommodations tax that the state collects from our local hotels and then remits back to the city. We've had a bucket of that money that's desperately needed to been allocated. So last year, towards the latter part of the year, we took the step of organizing a accommodations tax advisory board, which is required by the state's procedures for how we allocate this money. They've met at the end of the year and have put together some recommendations for you on how to allocate the money that we have available, which is $103,000 and some change. They received applications for 2 projects. The first being the marketing for the Malden Blues and Jazz Festival, which applied for $3,487.80 to go towards out-of-market advertising for that event. And the second being an application for $100,000 for the stage cover that we just talked about. They voted unanimously to recommend the award or the allocation of these funds to these 2 projects. And so now that's ready to go to City Council for their potential action.
Any questions for Mr. Deerhog? Then do we have a motion to accept the ATAX Committee, Advisory Committee recommendation and forward to full council with a recommendation for approval?
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. Is there discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. And that goes to full council. Brings us to our second public comment period, which brings us to committee concerns. Which brings us to one more item.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? The ayes have it. We are adjourned at 6:33.
Call to order the Public Works Committee for January 6th. It is 6:36 PM. I have Mr. Michael Reynolds and Ms. Carol King with today. First, let's start with any public comment. Any public comment with Public Works? All right, with none, I'll go to the next. What do I hear about reading and approval of minutes?
Motion to approve?
A motion, do I have a second?
Second.
A second, any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign. The ayes have it. All right, let's see, the reports and communications from Mr. Fleeman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee members. As far as the debris pickup goes, since the last time we met, we've engaged Belmore to come back to assist us in the pickup of debris citywide. They initiated their activities today. They're up in the Pine Forest neighborhood, which is like Vine Hill, Mapleton, areas that had large trees and lots of debris, lots of tree stumps. Public Works has finished pretty much everything on the east side of the city. We're working on the we call it Brookside, which is all the streets that end in Brooks, and we're working north towards Belmore. DOT is still assisting with us. I reached out, they've cleaned Knollwood and Forster Woods. I've reached out, let them know about the concerns that the city has in regards to Ashmore Bridge, Miller, and Smith Hines. They're elevating those on their priority list, and they're also going to be assisting us by meeting in between us and Belmore and like the Pine Valley neighborhood. The goal set forth by city administrator to finish this by the end of the month is completely doable, and that's we're on track to have it done. Aside from that, budget, we're all about 50%. No issues there. We're just rocking and rolling.
Yeah, are we ready for Snowmageddon this year?
We will do what we always do. We will ice around all the buildings, and we'll reach out to DOT, and we'll have our salt dog ready, and we'll assist the DOT in any ways that we can. But to reminder, we don't have the necessary infrastructure to deal with catastrophic storms. Just temper your expectations.
Already tempered. It's not gonna have-
Been there, done that.
It's the early 80s. I'm very familiar how we handle snow here.
Quick question.
Please.
Mr. Flayman, with Belmore, so they'll be working citywide under your, no?
So with our contract with Belmore, the expectation is that they're going to grab all of the tree stumps, which are
Right.
where we've cleaned before. The big stump is at the curb, and we can't get with our equipment, and we can't haul it anywhere. The expectation is they're going to go ahead and get all the tree stumps. In the
Y'all have
interim,
already,
yes.
Yeah.
So in the interim leading up to the contract, I went up citywide and geolocated all the
Right.
piles and stumps. And so we generated Excel tables and maps. Here are the stumps, go get these. And they're going to be operating the stumps, grab and go citywide. If it's on their maps, on their list, they get it, they go. As far as neighborhoods, what we're really left with right now is just the west side of the city, which is, the last bit of Pine Forest, Pine Valley, and some of that Ashmore Bridge area. And we're working from the south, they're working from the north, meet in the center and just be done. There is no more citywide. If it's east of 276, there is no storm debris. We've already gotten it. Anything that's being put out now is just debris.
understood. Perfect. Thank you.
Ms. Reynolds, any questions? Okay. We'll move on then to.
Can I add one more thing? I said something to Mr. Fleeman earlier, but the improvements around City Hall have not gone unnoticed. So thank you for the new landscaping and the little sitting areas and the planters, those things that sometimes the men do not notice, but I did notice. So
So we've been working with the
very hard, yeah.
Parks and Grounds division to kind of come up with goals or expectations with another number of beautification projects each year. And, we did the front of the cultural center. We landscaped behind the cultural center. We got rid of all the pine straw. We got all the grass down. We've been planting. I've lost count of how many trees. It's a large number. And so now we've been working on other areas that just need to be spruced up. It's like eating an elephant, one bite at a time. And so we've been able to do the BDS side of City Hall, the PD entrance. If you've come up 276, the Malden sign as you're coming underneath 417, there's, it's got mulched, it's got plantings. We're beautifying everything that we can. The next project that we're going to be doing is going to be the entrance to Sunset Park. And it's going to be a lot of the same. And we're trying to keep the same sort of motif with mulch and plantings, just to have some level of consistency citywide.
You don't realize how much it was needed until it was done. I'm just like, wow, that just made such a huge difference. So thanks again.
I will let them know.
Well, and on that note, just want to compliment the Christmas lights on the cultural center were fantastic.
That was all Gina. That was all Gina. I will tell you that storing them at Public Works was an adventure. We spent a few days reorganizing the whole facility to make enough space.
Well, you have that new facility out there, so you've got more space.
So we reorganized and we were able to store everything. Funny story. I'll stop after this. Is you know, we have the big ring tunnel thing. And so we were like, I'd really hate to take this apart because that's how it's going to get broken, right? So we didn't take any measurements. And so we tried to get it into Public Works. It turns out it's larger than any of our doors. And we tried every single one around the facility. I had to take it apart.
When I walked up to the lights, I saw it just from coming from this side here, and I was going, nice, but I really expected more. Then I made a turn around and I saw all that was done over in front of the sports center, and I was like, all right, this is awesome.
It's only going to get better from what I understand talking to Ms. McAtee. I do understand that we're getting a new Christmas tree, and we with the cleaning of Public Works, we have ample storage for more.
In this case, more is better, right, Gina?
Nice. All right. Have any other questions? All right, that's it. Let's move on to unfinished business, which there is none, and new business, solid waste ordinance.
Solid waste ordinance. So this was supposed to come for you a while ago. Things came up. You know, then there was hurricanes and everything else. But Seth and I started looking at some of our ordinances and different things that needed to be cleaned up. And I stand before you, like I have many times before, being this is what we have to change and why. For our solid waste ordinance, it hasn't been touched in years, probably better part of a decade. In the ordinance itself, it describes commercial pickup and residential pickup. We haven't done commercial pickup in over a decade. So it seemed like a good time to go ahead and take out the portions of the ordinance that were no longer applicable to our citywide activities, provide better clarification to bulk pickup, to multifamily, to the little nuances of our day-to-day activities that needed clarification. We needed to, we've transitioned to a sidearm fleet of trash trucks, and we needed to put appropriate language in there to reflect how you're supposed to store your can and what are the limitations of our access to your can based on the equipment doing it. So what I had before you is a request for committee to advance the city council revisions to the solid waste ordinance. If there's any aspects of it you would like to discuss, or if you want me to go through my changes, I will.
Yeah, I was just the changes, what we currently do. I understand that some of the things that we weren't doing anyways. So it was just aligning it with reality. What would you say are the biggest changes?
The biggest change would be just, I mean, there's pages if you in your packet that are just of where things are striked out, and that's all the language for the commercial solid waste collection. We just don't do it. As far as everything else, we added definitions in there to describe what bulk waste is, general bulk and household or residential bulk. In the ordinance as they're currently written, we're not supposed to be picking up bulk. We're not supposed to come get your hot water heater or your television or your entertainment stand. But if I didn't, they'd be here with pitchforks.
It's certain things, the water heaters and stuff we actually recycle.
Yeah, so anything that's scrap metal, we do recycle, and all that goes back to the general fund. And it's a handful, $10,000 a year is what we're generating.
I still get kicks out of when somebody was in the neighborhood said, well, they picked up my rug. And I was like, no, I picked it up because I was going to the dump. And I think so. A lot of people do that, and you guys get all kinds of credit for it. And then you hear, you got it for me 2 years ago. That would be a good Samaritan just helping out. So,
and I guess, and then the last thing that would probably be the biggest change is the ordinance, the way it was currently written, is it gives a strand run on where it says single families, multifamily townhomes, and then there's not a comma and apartments less than 9 units. And there was always this discrepancy. We've talked to the the attorney, whether the 9 unit applies to everything in the sentence or just this part of the sentence. And an ordinance shouldn't read where you having to have a lawyer explain it to you. So we went ahead and added a definition of multifamily and just made it clear that a multifamily is any single ownership property that has 9 or more units, and then just outlays simple facts that we will not be providing bulk service, we will not be providing can service, that you need to have a commercial entity take care of your solid waste, which in my opinion was the way the solid waste ordinance was originally written. I think that was the intent. And this way, just we can satisfy that intent by just clarifying.
That's almost what you did. It looked like clarification or things we didn't do.
Yeah.
Questions?
And Mr. Chair, I'll make the motion to forward to full council the recommendation to approve the changes to the solid waste ordinance.
Motion to a second.
I'll second it.
Second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign. Ayes have it. Council. All right, C-Fund application request.
So the Public Works Department is requesting that the committee and council approve a C-Funds application for the signalization of 2 intersections within the city. You know, with the work that's going on in and around the Knollwood neighborhood, we know we've put the True Lion in, and True Lion, as part of their construction, has actually paved the driveway. It's not even a driveway, it's actually a roadway, so it aligns with Green Street, Murray. We've been working on that project for years. In the last week or two, we've gotten preliminary plats for the development that's going to be going behind True Lions. So it's been a project that's been like in the works here for a while. So we would really like to get the funding in place so that we could get the engineering and design and everything done for the signalization to allow that to be, you know, straight across from, I don't know if it remains, I don't even know if it's going to remain Knollwood or we have to rename it, but that it it comes to the light straight across from Green Street at Kellett's. The other intersection is on Holland Road where Bridgeway Boulevard meets at the approximate location of like the Green High School. With the anticipation of soccer stadium and traffic, we're going to need means of traffic control to get traffic in and out. And that would be the next, the 2, intersections that need to be studied, designed, and constructed. So the C-Fund application,
This is just engineering though, correct? This is not the actual.
engineering design, any right-of-way design or acquisition, like the lead up to it, and basically pre-development activities. In the case of 276 and Knollwood, we will do the work. We're going to have to fund the construction. This project's going to be working with SCDOT at the end. SCDOT is going to own the light. When it comes to Holland and Bridgeway Station, we'll be working independently. We'll still have to fund the construction of the light, but we'll be within our roadway inventory. So we will operate and maintain it just like the light at the intersection of Bridges and Holland Road.
I know there were some questions between Trulent and Mexican restaurant. I'm sorry, I can't.
Papa's and Beer.
Has that been resolved yet? Do we know?
So to my knowledge, no, the conflict there is that if the signalization goes in and that driveway, which is really a roadway, becomes the outlet for Devon and Knollwood, then in order for DOT to kind of give its approval of everything, it's going to require a realignment of a driveway for Papa's and Beer. And the idea would be that instead of having the exit for the extension road, Right there, basically on top of the entrance to there is they would actually tie in back behind. There is some topography issues, so I don't know if the engineer, which I believe is Blue Water, has figured out exactly how that tie-in is going to work. David, do you have any insight on that as to where, are they still working on that? Okay, so that engineering hasn't been resolved, but to your question earlier, and yes, this is just for basically engineering and operation, pre-development activities. With C Funds has about a little over $2 million left to allocate in their two allocation periods, one in February and one in March. And so we didn't want to put forth an application that we hadn't measured and come through council just in case we get funded. We don't want to have to come back and be like, oh, here's a project you didn't know about that we were working on. So we thought we'd get permission on the front end, the opinion. The other idea we had was too large of a project. So we thought this would be a good opportunity for us to get some money, put it into some pre-development activities that are going to be necessary. Because regardless if they can get Papa's and Beer worked out on that signalization project, the other signalization at Bridgeway and Holland has to happen. So that we need to be working on as well. So this is a way to leverage C Fund resources to go ahead and work on that while we're still exploring the potential signalization that Northwood.
We don't expect any problems. The bank is wanting the traffic.
Yeah, the only thing the bank has asked for and is really they're asking, is it possible to have that extension called Truliant Way or Truliant Road or Boulevard or something like that? And so we gave them no definitive answer on that, but there's still some things that have to be worked out. But they want the road realignment. The developer right behind them with the townhomes, who's doing townhomes that on the zone lot for townhomes and doing single family homes on the other lot that they acquired. They want that realignment there. I'm not sure about Papa's and Beer, but I think they would appreciate having that tie into a light. It's just a matter of can they make all of the rise and runs work properly for that topography there.
Questions?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to forward to full council with a recommendation of approval, a C Funds application request for engineering design and right-of-way acquisition for two signalization projects, Highway 276 and Murray Drive, as well as Holland Road and Bridgeway Station.
Second.
Second.
Second, any discussion? That, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those like sign, the ayes have it. Move to full council. All right, go to public comment. Do we have any public comment here for Public Works? All right, committee concerns. No committee concerns. Go to hear an adjournment. Motion?
Second.
And a second. Any discussion? No. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it. You're adjourned.
Oh, are they? Okay. Could you send that to him real quick, please? No. The email version.
Call to order our City of Malden special called city council meeting of Monday, January 6, 2025. City Hall at approximately 6:57 PM. Let the records reflect that Councilman Mr. Matney, Councilman King, whatever his name is there, Trailing, and along with Mr. Steenbeck, and myself are in chamber. Councilman Allgood is in via Zoom, and Mr. Reynolds will be dialing in as he had to leave chamber for a son needs a ride home. He had to go take care of that. Family first, always. Also with us tonight is our city administrator, Mr. Duncan, staff members, and our illustrious residents, long time no see, Dr. McPhail and Miss McPhail, Barbara. Thank you for being here, and some other business we'll get to in a few minutes. So that's our welcome. Let's see, we're in January, so the rotation is back. Mr. Matney, would you do our invocation and pledge of allegiance?
Absolutely. Thank you, Mayor. I'd invite anybody who would like to bow their heads to join me in prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this new year. We know that there were a lot of things that happened in 2024 that made it difficult on a lot of folks, but you walked with us and you carried us all through it. We ask that as we start making the journey into 2025, that you continue with your grace, your protection, your guidance, and your presence. We would ask that you be with us tonight and that you be with us as we leave here. These things we ask in your name. Amen. Anybody who would like to join me for the pledge, please rise. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Matney. Next item on our agenda is new business, our city center village master plan discussion. Mr. Duncan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So tonight we have with us some fantastic representatives from Seaman Whiteside. I'll let them introduce themselves in just a second. But hopefully tonight we're going to go through the final version of the City Center Village Master Plan. We'll flip through it. And though Kayla wanted to join us tonight, she unfortunately had some sick children at home. So she was going to try to Zoom in if she could, so she might pop up, but we'll see. But we're grateful to have Kyle and Hannah here and to kind of walk us through where we are. And if there's any other little last changes, we can put those in there. And if we're ready to finalize it, we're ready to finalize it. So with that, I'll turn it over.
Seth, appreciate the introduction. Mayor, Council, appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today. My name is Nicholas Myers. I'm with Seaman Whiteside, and I've got Hannah Durham here with me as well. As Seth mentioned, Kayla Joyner, who's been kind of spearheading this effort, is home not only with sick children, but a sick husband as well. So she is the lone soldier in their household right now. So as you mentioned earlier, family first. So we're going to do our best to cover in her absence. And with that, we will sort of dive in a little bit of backstory before we really get into the details of this. we've met with a working session. It's been a couple months ago. So we've taken that feedback. So you're going to see a little bit of a repeat of what you saw a few months back if you were in that work session. And then we've kind of taken it a little bit further with some of these small area plans and some other maps we'll show you towards the end. As far as the master plan itself goes, the city of Malden's had several master plans looking at a village center, a framework plan, various names, various iterations. But I think one of the shortcomings of those plans was that they were kind of approached, holistically as if this were a clean slate to work with. And so while there were some great ideas presented in many of those plans, I think that, the unfortunate reality is that the entire focus area in the city center is just currently not available to do what the city wants to do with it. So the way we approached this plan was to look at it as much more of a phased master plan. And so as we get into this, we'll talk about, what the city can do today, what it can do in sort of a midterm, and what it could do sort of long term. And then we kind of pull it all together with an overall plan. And what I also want to emphasize as we go through this is not meant to be the final, answer, the final master plan. These are, we're basically trying to equip you with a kit of parts. You can kind of plug and play different elements. We're trying to set up a framework that can help to bring in potential developers, but also guide development in a very, cohesive and thoughtful way so that you end up with a village center that Malden sort of desires to have over time. So with that, we'll kind of dive into this. As I mentioned, we're going to just kind of start with a little bit of a site analysis, looking at sort of this phasing I alluded to in terms of, what the city can do now, short term and then long term. Kind of go into some land use maps, talk about sort of give you some precedent imagery, which is sort of a flavor of what we're thinking, and then start to dive into some of these small area studies, which is kind of where we left off during our work session before. So this is sort of what we have identified as the short-term plan or the short-term opportunity areas. So all the properties you see highlighted in yellow are properties that are currently owned or controlled by the city of Malden. And so theoretically, those parcels could start, the development process tomorrow. But as you can see, it's not the whole city center. It's kind of disjointed. I mean, we've got a couple clusters, but the reality is to have a comprehensive overall city center, we're just not going to be able to do everything all at once. And so this is sort of our starting point today. And if we go to the next slide, this is sort of some parcels that working with city staff, we've sort of identified as probably potentially acquirable in the not too distant future. Not going to put a precise timeline on there, but in our minds, we're kind of thinking five, maybe 10 years at most, but sort of not too far, parcels that are probably acquirable. And so you can see we're starting to get closer to, the full city center project area. And then if you go to the last one, this slide shows kind of purple. The purplish parcels are sites that are probably going to be the last to acquire unless something changes just based on the feedback we've heard and the current condition out there, current climate out there. Those are probably going to be the last dominoes to fall, if you will. And then the kind of teal, greenish blue color, those are parcels that have recently been, redeveloped. And so we are not proposing to change those. We are just going to incorporate those into the plan, work with some of these new projects that have already started to happen, and then hopefully achieve a full build out of the framework area in the eventual future. I should probably talk a little bit about the study area. I mean, most folks are probably familiar with what I'm talking about when I mention framework area, but we're talking Jenkins Street to the north, Main Street or 276 to the west, the train tracks to the east, and East Butler to the right, as outlined here. The slide that is in front of you now, this is just a quick kind of view of the existing current land use map. You've commercial predominantly on the west side of Main Street. There's the civic piece over by the cultural center, and then the sports complex over there. And then the other residential areas, working with staff, we kind of started to identify what makes sense, sort of looking a little bit more to the future. On the west side, traditional single-family neighborhoods, those are likely to stay single-family neighborhoods. But on the east side, while those are currently traditional family neighborhoods, we sort of identified that area as a potential area for some future higher density, again, outside of our study area, but just kind of wanted to show you the larger context and how the city center fits within this greater context. So then on the next slide, this is where we really start to break this site down into sort of more manageable parts with sort of a theme or a focus, if you will. So the northern portion, we're kind of calling our urban core. This precedent is already kind of set with some of the work that's going on right now. So this would be a very pedestrian-focused mixed-use district, potentially with some residential components, and we'll get a little bit more into what uses we think would be appropriate here. But that's sort of the more urban core to the north, kind of leaning on what's already in place and what's sort of across Main Street. Kind of that lower southwest corner is more of the commercial core, and then again, kind of leaning on what's existing. And again, across the Murray Drive and the railroad tracks, that's more the civic core. These are not like starkly defined regions. And so we've tried to represent that by blending these colors together a little bit. And you'll see as we get through some of these other slides, there's transitional areas, and we're not building a wall or anything crazy to separate these areas out. But those are kind of the types or the use types. We needed a framework to kind of start to program what we felt were appropriate uses. And sort of to that end, these next couple slides are meant to give you a flavor of what we're trying to achieve in these areas, sort of the vision of what this could be. We tried to select imagery that was appropriate for Malden, and what makes Malden special. So, we have not tried to go too big. Kind of kept things with a little bit more of a small town flavor. So, if there's any of these you want to kind of talk about in detail, but again, these are sort of the first slide you're looking at is the commercial uses. So again, you can see lots of outdoor dining, extremely walkable and pedestrian friendly, lots of gathering spaces, a good mix of hardscape, softscape, and again, sort of, a very pedestrian scale environment. Going to the next page, a lot of words here. I'm not going to read it all to you, but sort of what we wanted to do was sort of set up again a framework for what this could be. So, in the commercial, not exclusively commercial, but this is sort of heavily focused on mixed density retail and dining. So, kind of want to exclude out some uses that don't traditionally make sense in a downtown. So, we're taking out large administrative buildings in this area, your funeral homes, tattoo shops, those types of things, warehousing, construction stuff. Those have their place in the city, just not in the downtown core. And then some other uses that we could see going in here, obviously restaurants and bars, like a small boutique grocery store, convenience store. We talk about boutique retail, meaning, trying to avoid national chains, support local retailers wherever possible. Potentially some residential here. The focus on residential in this district would be, above the ground level. So second, third stories, again, keeping that ground level and pedestrian realm as activated as possible. And as you can see, dining with outdoor seating and pedestrian connectivity. So again, pedestrian focused, walkable, and is sort of what we're trying to achieve there. If you recall on the plan, sort of just east of this area was the sort of civic portion. Again, not limiting it to civic only. I mean, as you can kind of see in these images, there's a nice mix of uses. Again, varying textures, varying forms, but again, lots of walkability, very much sort of open space gathering areas, places that can serve multiple purposes as well. We don't want to have spaces that are sitting dormant for long periods of time. So we want to have a lot of flexibility in many of these spaces. And so these are just sort of some of our visions for what the sort of civic area that we've looked at could look like. Moving to the next slide, again, similar to the commercial slide, things that we think would make sense here. This is probably where the public administration buildings would make most sense, hence City Hall is here. Again, public parks and recreation areas, potentially some sort of outdoor recreational, whether it be passive or a little more programmed to be determined, event spaces. Again, trying to keep restaurants, outdoor dining, potentially some residential, but again, focusing more on the public services and civic uses in this area. And then last but not least is sort of the urban core space. That was sort of more towards the north. Again, there's some pretty awesome development already happening to sort of get this ball rolling. But again, through these pictures, I think you might start to notice a theme. Again, we're looking at lots of land or space dedicated to the pedestrian realm or to the public realm and to the pedestrian. Again, making this less vehicular dominated and much more pedestrian focused, and creating a variety of spaces that helps activate all of these different little pockets that we're creating. And then some of the typical uses here, again, restaurants, bars, breweries, again, outdoor dining and entertainment, potentially some residential in this area, again, trying to get some of that density needed to support some of these other uses. A parking structure would make sense here potentially just to, again, consolidate those vehicular facilities and provide more space available for pedestrians. Then we start to get into sort of boiling or drilling down into these areas a little bit more. And so what we did, and this is about where we stopped at our work session, was to identify sort of 3 small area study focus areas. And so we broke that up into, south to north, 1, 2, and 3. And so we'll start to kind of dive into those. And again, what I want to say before we get into these is, these are your kit of parts. None of these are probably going to be the final answer. We've got a couple different options for a few of these, and the likely outcome is probably some hybrid of all of them and then some new things sprinkled in as well. So, again, just kind of try to take a mental snapshot of this graphic. We can probably split back to it if need be, but we're going to work our way from south to north as we walk through these next couple slides. So the first slide is going to be the South Design Study area. We've got 3 plans that we looked at for this. So this is a reimagined civic core with kind of activated green space and commercial connectivity is the overall sort of theme for this area. The first option is, again, they're all relatively similar with some subtle differences. So the first option here you see is it's a single access point. Realistically, not ever going to be a full access that close to the intersection of Main and Butler, but potentially maintaining an access point sort of right there near the Bohemian Bowl, and then proposing a mix of retail and commercial with a surface parking lot kind of north of City Hall. This concept in particular was kind of driven by a potential niche user that reached out to the city. And so we wanted to test out what that would look like if that user was to indeed move forward with a project in City Center. And so that's what that larger box to the southeast of here represents. Again, generic at this level, but wanted to sort of test out a potential user in this scenario. And so really, I think the key thing to sort of remember from this one is, in this instance, we're showing a surface parking lot on the north of City Hall. Surface parking lots, for all of the hate that they receive, they do work well from a phasing standpoint. So it's hard to go in and build a parking structure from day one. So often a good cost-effective way is to start with a surface parking lot and come back later when there's additional density, additional users to support a structured parking situation. So we don't love surface parking lots, but they do have a purpose in a master plan or in a phased approach. And so in this particular example, we're showing a surface parking lot. When we get to the other 2, we've swapped that out for a parking structure. Just know that probably not going to go in day one with a parking structure. Maybe it is, maybe you do, maybe you don't. But again, the key here, we want to provide flexibility. We want to provide the ability for phasing as things come online, as more property becomes available. So kind of moving to the next option, very similar to the one we just looked at, although we have changed the road network ever so slightly. We're looking at a potential full access a little bit further down from Butler and a right in, right out at the East Butler intersection, probably more realistic from the DOT. We are still in the process of working through some access with the DOT. They're slow to give us answers, and they are very non-committal on their answers. So that's probably one of the loose ends we'll be tying up after tonight, is trying to nail down some of this access. But this concept, again, it's very similar in nature. I forgot to mention before, the kind of jaggedy looking building that's identified as retail/commercial, that's intended to be an adaptive reuse of the existing fire station. So that building does exist, but the other buildings shown on here in gray would be new construction, with the exception of City Hall, I guess. This concept in here, though, it subs out the larger commercial retail space that we were talking about earlier at the lower southeast corner for a little smaller, more kind of boutique type retails. You can see the existing Bohemian Bowl restaurant over kind of to the west side, just for scale, to kind of give you an idea of what size we're talking about with some of these buildings. Again, tons of green space that connects everything. There would be pathways through here. That little park area around City Hall is about 1.5 acres of green space. So it's a pretty substantial gesture around City Hall. And again, that's relatively unprogrammed in the master planning phase. Again, the focus being on flexibility for whatever the city needs this space to be. And then the last version of sort of the southern study area is it's again very similar to the other two. This one, however, looks to keep a connection south of City Hall, which is currently there today. And so, that currently is drawn with parallel parking, so it kind of creates a little bit of an urban feel through there. Those could be closed down as well. You could have food trucks, you could do a market there, all kinds of potential programming. There's a nice little loop around the green space in this idea. Again, I don't think any one of these plans is intended to be the solution. We're just trying to give you a kit of parts to work from. So, again, central green space around Malden City Hall. The main addition here, again, is that cut through parallel parking. Did I miss anything on these, Hannah? I know I ran through them pretty quickly. So then if you can reflect back to that graphic from a few slides ago, we're working our way north to design study area 2. This area is also coincides with the public storage facility. So this is probably our longer term play to be able to pull this off here. And so if you can sort of match line these pages together, that surface parking lot was sort of on the right middle of the page. And so that could then be expanded into a true, large parking deck that could accommodate most, if not all, the parking needs for City Center potentially. So again, that's probably a longer term play, but that could not only satisfy the needs for folks coming to City Center, it could also support an apartment project in this location. So we're showing a potential apartment complex project here, and then some new rethought sort of commercial space on the west side of the new City Center street. Kind of if you want to use a precedent for sort of what that is, so sort of like a mini camper down, if you will, sort of on that west side is sort of the idea there. Lots of cool plaza space with green space mixed into it. Final configuration, obviously, we're at a very high master planning level, but just wanted to give you an idea of, how that could shape up in this area. And then last but not least is the northern segment. So I'm going to mess with you here. This one, you're going to need to actually rotate your page or turn your head a little bit to get north up. Jenkins Street is on the left, so you can see the development in progress. Obviously, that's going to remain. There is currently on the right side of this page a surface parking lot planned, I believe, to help support that development. Again, that's a great way to phase in, future a potential future parking deck, or it could remain service parking to help support some of this potential commercial space that we're proposing on the other across from the currently in development project. So again, what this is showing here along Main Street is a mix of different commercial retail spaces. We have shown what a potential boutique hospitality or boutique hotel could look like. Those locations could shift. Like before this meeting, for example, we were reviewing this presentation again, and we thought that since let me quickly give a little more background to this. So the portion that we've shown here is actually, we've continued to maintain the parcel lines because a few of these are probably, like Malden currently owns that middle parcel where there's sort of an L-shaped building. So Malden actually owns that. And so before we came to this meeting, we were thinking, if that wanted to happen sooner, and maybe there was a hotel that wanted to come, or that the hotel could easily be shifted to that site. So what we're saying here is, like, just because we're showing a hotel on the eastern portion here, if it made sense in the timing of things, or if the right developer came forward, or whatever happened to get us there, there's a lot of flexibility built into this, and you could easily take that L-shaped hotel, pop it over to the next site, and make that happen. So again, the goal with this is to provide a vision, but also flexibility so that you can adjust on the fly as opportunities come about. And then the last slide is a little bit more analysis. We kind of wanted to bring everything together. So there was a lot embedded in these other slides. And so the goal of these last two slides is really to kind of pull out a few other pieces. So on the left is one of the proposed road networks. This was the one that maintained that drive south of City Hall. But in theory, this is kind of the road network we would want to build around as this master plan starts to come to fruition. I think with this road network, we would be able to achieve the goals and also achieve the goals of getting, the appropriate development in place, but also the walkability and pedestrian friendly, but also, accommodating the vehicles as well, because we kind of balance all three items. And then on the right side of this page is sort of taking those study areas and compiling them into one. Again, ultimately, will it look like this? Probably not. But this is just wanted to give you an overall master plan if you were to take all of those study areas, as we had sort of master planned them and put it all into one city center. And so with that, happy to answer any questions, go back over anything. Whatever you guys got.
That's clear to me, very precise. Touchdown. That was fast and furious. But I understood a lot of it. Thank you.
Apologies if I went too fast.
Thank you very much, but I understand trying to get in. Council, it's discussion time. Unless Seth wants to add anything.
Only that, I really appreciate this. We had seen a version on Friday that wasn't quite hitting on all cylinders. And so I appreciate the hard work Friday and then today to kind of make sure that all the little kind of dots were, I's were dotted and T's were crossed. So I really appreciate that work. And sorry, it's Nick, not Kyle. I don't know where Kyle's another contractor.
No worries.
Okay. So sorry about that. But no, Nick, Hannah, and the entire team, Kayla has done a phenomenal job on this. And I think that they've really kind of hit the notes that we were looking for from the staff perspective of making sure there's interconnectivity, making sure that we had options. We actually even, we can draw as many boxes, especially on the south side, as we want in various configurations. But helping to get some definition and certainty from DOT has been a big element for what we're trying to do. And so we appreciate their flexibility of drawing. If we are unable to move that tie into Owens Lane, how do we lay this out so that way we have the existing driveway of the old BB&T driveway and the City Hall driveway? So really appreciate all of that. The question I think ultimately remains is, may not be perfect, but from a conceptual design, does it meet kind of the vision of where council is going? And that's the question I hope we can decide tonight, or at least give it any additional feedback to kind of tweak it to get to that across that line.
Any input? To me, having a conceptual plan, just from what I've seen here, I think they hit on it. It's the flexibility and the fact that, as you said, you draw the boxes for a visualization. That don't mean they're brick and mortar tomorrow, but it gives us a path forward with some definitions I think we can talk around. And
one thing I forgot to mention, we hadn't actually performed a market study on this. So, based on our experience as consultants, our conversations with other development partners that we work with, working with city staff, we may be a little over on retail or under on hospitality. So again, or, under on, residential units. So, those are part of the flexibility and sort of the higher level master planning things that, are kind of the next level to do the deep dive to figure out exactly, what Malden will support now, 10 years and further into the future.
thank you, Nick. Mr. Batney?
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to say that, compared to the original presentation that we saw not too terribly long ago, I think this is head and shoulders above this, head and shoulders above that. I do like the way that we do have that blending and that adaptability. I think it starts to answer what we're looking for in terms of a walkable space that's connected ultimately, or will ultimately be connected with the trail. And as we continue developing some of these other nodes within the city, I think it's a much better starting point than we had a month or so ago.
What we're seeing tonight, Seth, are you looking as far as we accept this as our envisioning plan to move forward, or?
Yeah, Mr. Allgood does have his hand raised, so.
I'm sorry, I
Yes.
missed it. Got you. Yeah, let's go with Mr. Allgood.
That's okay, Mayor. I put the hand up as soon as you started talking. My question was, with the parking structure, what are you seeing nowadays when it comes to parking structures, how they are built? I'm now seeing a lot more things, and you kind of have this alluded when you look at one of the other ones where you're talking about apartment complex tied into that parking structure as well. But I'm just curious, what are you seeing, and overall, if you went from north to south, what is the potential there for parking decks? Pro, con? Just open-ended question to you about parking decks.
So I missed the part of your question from north to south. What was that part of the
Oh,
question?
it was just me wrapping up. So basically, just tell me a little bit about what's new in the realm of parking decks, and within the master plan, you obviously have it in one spot. Would it be, with the flexibility of this plan, would it make any sense to perhaps float that around into different spots?
So I can't say that there's a lot of new developments on parking decks necessarily, that I can allude or, break to you, if you will. The rationale though for the parking structure where it is currently is sort of, there's a lot of things that went into that. Like, I guess first and foremost, the southern section is probably the lowest hanging fruit in terms of available to be redeveloped by the city. And so for all of the development that we're kind of proposing and see as feasible on this lower section, we're going to need to park it somehow. And so the concept on the screen currently is a surface parking model, which would potentially work in the short term. But then when you start to add multifamily units to a project, like we're kind of proposing in this middle section, that drives up your parking demand, but that also offsets some of the cost and would potentially make building the parking structure at that point more feasible. So that was sort of really the driver of locating it here. The northern portion of the site, dimensionally, it's a little bit tighter. I know it doesn't look that much different, but when you actually get in there and start laying these things out, it is a little bit tighter dimensionally. There's a good bit of development already happening. So there really wasn't a great location dimensionally that allowed for a parking deck to be built, but also not just a parking deck, but a parking deck that could be built aesthetically and sort of integrated into the urban fabric. So the way we've got it shown here, while yes, part of that deck would be exposed to the south, it's integrated into the multifamily building as well. So you're not just having a true or a truly freestanding parking structure visible on all sides. So it helps to sort of weave it more into the urban fabric. Not to say you could not do a smaller parking structure somewhere else. For example, the little hotel, again, we're at a very conceptual level, but kind of the thought there, I mean, as you can see, there's no parking lot associated with that. The thought there was that would be more like a podium style structured parking, a level, maybe two of parking beneath the hotel itself. Just an idea, you could always, again, like I said, the parking structures, they're almost like an erector set. So you can build them. There's some critical dimensions you've got to hit, but the flexibility in terms of elongating them to hit whatever, parking number you need is there. And they can also be sort of expanded upon too, which is sort of something we had thought about as, this middle piece, depending on, because you could build a smaller deck, like in the final map, which, Seth, if you can go to that last page, you can kind of see this particular idea contemplated building a smaller deck and then expanding it. That's, not the most cost-effective way to do it, but that's just another, option you could potentially have going forward if you needed the deck sooner than, some of these other pieces came online. So long answer, not sure if I completely answered your question or not, but feel free to follow up if you have anything else.
And Mr. Frank, I would add to that, there's some great examples both in Greenville and Florence where you see residential and retail wrapped into a parking deck. And so to your point, yes, it could be that we could find a development partner that instead of putting a structured parking behind City Hall next to public storage, that it might make sense on a different area here where you've got that integrated first floor retail, multi-story residential above it with a parking deck incorporated into it. It's just really just about finding the right partner and seeing where we could do that, that they would be, desiring to do. So, yeah, so I think that there's some options there on the map as well.
Thank you. And obviously, we're talking about a concept of a plan here that offers a lot of flexibility and looking at things in different phases. When you look at the new road going all the way down, are we envisioning parking that comes in off that road as in you come in as an angle, or are they just parallel to the road?
So that's a great question that I asked Kayla last week. I don't know if she told y'all this answer or not, but they laid it out so that it could be either. It's either 90-degree or slanted.
Correct.
Okay.
So depending on, and I'll just add a little more to that. So depending on, or typically parallel or angled create a more urban feeling environment. And is just it's a little more, it just creates a more urban feeling environment. However, you obviously have more efficiency with the head-in spaces. So that's what we have sort of accounted for either option, depending on, you know, the city's preference and whoever the development partner may be and how this phases.
Thank you.
And it also helps too, because again, parking, depending on how these things phase, it may be, you know, we may be at a shortfall, or parking may be hard to come by. You know, again, like we're trying to create a pedestrian walkable environment, and that's the end goal. But the reality is folks are going to have to drive here for the foreseeable future. And so we can't, it's a trying to strike a balance between accommodating vehicles, accommodating the pedestrians with this eye towards the future of a more pedestrian focused city center.
So, Mr. Mayor, to go back to your question, if the council so desires, it could say, put its stamp of approval on this plan and saying, yes, this is what we're looking to do. This kind of meets the vision, although it's not going to be the final buildable blueprints, but the overall vision is on track with where city council wants to be. Or if council wants to take more time, we could always attach to a future agenda as well.
My personal thought is I like what you put together. I understand 80% of it. And I like the colors. That way, when I go home, I can start matching up colors and not having to flip the page and trying to keep up with the audio and the pages on the screen. Didn't seem to be the sync the page I was turning to. So, you know, I just, being a little more elderly, I need more time to turn pages on paper. We do have those that scroll up and down very well, but I like paper. So I'd like to see us, I like what you've done. I think we've made a lot of progress in the last short time that we got it. We've got, to me, this is good enough for us to have, let's call it a workshop where we sit around and we just pick it to death. And, you know, Frank may want yellow and white lines interspaced every 20, 30 feet, different color schemes that would match the color of our signs and wayfinding. And there, that's kind of an inside joke. But, you know, just be able to pick that part and move the pieces around and get on the same page. It's, I think it's something we can work with. I like it. We good?
Yes, sir.
No hands waving? All right. Well, thank you guys very much for being here and for bearing with us over the last couple of months and hearing the discussions and putting it on paper where it looks like something I can
We
read.
appreciate it, and thank you all for the opportunity.
Thank you. Next item for us is consideration of executive session. This looks like economic development. Deferred to Mr. Matney.
Thank you, Mayor. Move we enter executive session to consider negotiations, incident, proposed contractual arrangements, and proposed sale or purchase of property for City Center Village as allowed under 30-4-70A2.
I was actually trying to balance the rate of flow of words from Mr. Matney versus Nick. Now, y'all could be a tight race. I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second for Mr. Steenback. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion to enter executive session, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. said aye. All right. Have you heard from Mr. Reynolds? We'll call this vote, Cindy, a 6-0. All right. So, good. So at 7:37, we'll go upstairs for executive session and reconvene down here afterwards. Thank you. Good. Ready? Oh. All right, council has returned to chambers at approximately 8:30 PM. Mr. Matney, would you like to report out?
Thank you, Mayor. Coming out of executive session, no decisions were made, no votes were taken.
Thank you, sir. Next item on agenda is possible action on the items discussed in executive session. Is there any items? Mr. Matney.
Thank you, Mayor. Move that we authorize the mayor and/or his designee to negotiate a purchase sale agreement for a certain property within a multi-county industrial park located within the city as discussed in executive session, where the execution of the purchase sale agreement is contingent upon results of a geotechnical survey.
Thank you, Mr. Matney. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Mr. Kraling. Any discussion? Hearing none, we're ready for a vote. All those in favor of the motion is put forth by Mr. Matney, seconded by Mr. Kraling, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign. Hearing none, the motion carries 6-0. I don't believe Mr. Reynolds joined us.
So, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Reynolds did join us in executive session, but he's not on the line right now.
Okay, so this vote would have been
6-0, sir.
6-0. Got it. Okay. Anything else? Hearing and seeing none. Next item is council request. Only request is for all of us to have a great start to 2025. No trips and falls.
It's in 2024, barely.
Yeah. All right, nothing else. What's here on the adjournment?
So moved.
Second.
Motion from Mr. Matney, second by Ms. King. Any discussion here? And all those in favor of adjournment, say aye.
Aye.
Frank and I.
Yes.
All right. 6-0. We are adjourned. 8:35.